Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. We're here, the bar's open, the lights are on. We're doing a little bit of cleanup before we get moving. We are distinguished today to have with us. This is the first one on the show. We've had a lot of people from a lot of different industries, a lot of different walks of life. We were talking beforehand, so I'll say it now. He was in the Army for 15 years, so I've already said I'm going to talk a little slower to him as a Marine. We got to do these things to help out our Army vets. Years in law enforcement, running, and I love saying this word because I figure every time I think I'm screwing it up. 2022 California gubernatorial candidate. I love saying the word gubernatorial. Ron Jones.
Thank you, sir. So glad to be with you today.
Look at that. You can get a little bit of applause there, a little bit of everything.
Before I even said anything.
We got to do it. If at any point in your life, somebody says, well, I didn't get enough applause, I'm making sure that I provide all the applause that everyone needs. So as we're doing this, folks, before we get ready to find out about Ron and about, his current race for governor in California and all the different elements to that, as always, we got to do some house cleaning. So first thing, sliding the mic over for a minute. We got the big board behind me. That big board is a sticker and a cause. If you've got a cause, you got something you believe in, you've got another podcast, you've got a charitable organization, I don't care what it is. You can reach me on Facebook, at the Above the Bar podcast, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. They're all the Above the Bar podcast. Our network is Earplug Podcast Network. Even my email is the Above the Bar podcast. Our TikTok is the Above the Bar podcast. I kept it very simple. Reach out to us on any one of those locations. I'll give you the address where to send it to. And if you got a sticker, you send me that sticker. Send me a little bit of information on that cause, and we'll read about your cause so other people can hear about it and other people can support you also. Remember, we're all equal at the bar. Bar stools all sit the same height, folks. We're all equal here. So we got that. But look, if your media feels like it needs a bit of an election campaign of its own because it's just not making it happen, make sure you reach out to Media by Dibs. Media by Dibs on Instagram and on Facebook, or Andrew Dibble on LinkedIn, and you mention to him, hashtag belly up to the bar. He's going to give you a 10% discount on your first media order and a free consultation. All right. It's all done. All those things are done. Ron, here we're going to get ready to get into it. Did I lose? Oh, your mic's still muted there, brother.
Yep.
So we're going to get into it. So we have joined us again. You gotta love saying the word gubernatorial.
It just rolls after a while.
It does.
Gubernatorial, yeah, it just feels good.
It does. So let's get into it. So Ron, 15 years in the Army.
Well, actually, I spent 11 years in the Army, and I just want to make sure we get the numbers straight because some people will, come back and say, you lied, you added 4 years, you got to be careful when you're campaigning. They pick on every word. So I spent 11 years in the Army. I was an officer and a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And then I voluntarily separated after 11 years, and I went into law enforcement, where I spent 23 and a half years retiring as a law enforcement commander. And some of my duties there included, other than being a commander of large areas and responsible for public safety and welfare in those areas, I was also the commander of the officer-involved shooting investigation team over a 4-county area. So when you watch Fox News or CNN or MSNBC and you see these shooting incidents that involve police officers, I can tell you that I've investigated, probably 20 of those over the course of my career. So I can give you a pretty good idea of what's going on. Also, over a 4-county area, I was the commander of the Mobile Field Force, which is our civil disturbance response team.
Okay.
So those were some of the things I did, as well, being on the executive committee of drug task forces, et cetera, things like that. And one that usually shocks people is they're not ready for is I also spent 10 years as a senior pastor. So I
Really?
have been, yes, very much aligned with, a lot of the things that that families hold dear, and all of those things really serve to inform me and how I think and the decisions I make.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did. I was on the board of trustees for our church for a while, and it was easier when the kids weren't so little, and then we had Lucas, and he's our youngest, and it's like that takes up more of my time than I had left over.
Yeah.
So you were a busy man. So how long ago did you retire from law enforcement?
11 years.
Okay.
So I have been doing other things around the world at the time. I also do business organizational consultation. Obviously, I would be involved in security operations and some of those things. So I've done that for a number of years, as well as the last 5 to 6 years. I've done that in cooperation with teaching at Bible conferences around the world. So I mix those up. So where I go, I can, end up doing both. So I can say in the time that I've been retired, I've been to South Africa, the Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Singapore, the Philippines, Malaysia, Japan. The list goes on.
See, that's me. I love to travel. We picked an RV up in 2020, and I constantly look at the RV and I'm like, I'll pack up and leave all of you tomorrow. Just want to hit the road. And especially after doing the podcasting. Yeah. My wife and I have talked about, like, this is episode 126, I think. I'm like, that's 120 some people we can just go visit and hang out with and do this all over again. I love it. So, and I see you're a fan of some beautiful artwork that you have behind you. I was just kind of admiring some of the artwork that you've got. So I got to ask, so how, for yourself, you were, so obviously you went to college to become to be a pilot. I'm assuming the Army is the same as for the Marine Corps. To be a pilot, you have to be an officer.
Well, yeah, you are an officer, but they had a really great program called the Warrant Officer Flight Training Program. And so, I went to college after, but the Army's philosophy was get them while they're young. So you can be 19 years old and go through flight school and train, and then they would give you your education after if you so chose. I mean, it was a 10-month program. This wasn't overnight. You went through officer training, very intense officer training, actually. And then over the course of time, then obviously the flight training came in, and you graduated 10 months later.
Well, it's funny you say the intense training. That was one of the things that, as a young Marine, I was always like, these officers, they don't go to Paris Island, or you think all these things, and then you finally, I was probably a senior sergeant or a staff sergeant at the time, and I started realizing what my officers went through to be able to lead myself, and how different that is from a sense. And I want to get into some of the political side, but you actually kind of bring up something that I think a lot of people don't realize. As a governor, you're a commander-in-chief of a military.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people miss that in the National Guard piece. How do you think that affects you, or how does that help you from that standpoint?
Well, obviously, I'm used to command structures. I'm used to a military hierarchy. I'm used to rank, and I'm used to what that means and the responsibility that comes with it. So, there are a lot of, I'll just say it this way, there are a lot of candidates who talk about being in support of our military and public safety, but the reality is I've spent more time in my life in uniform than out of it. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 34 years in uniform.
And you got good hair.
Why, thank you.
64 and good hair. Look at that.
Well,
yeah. For those of you that aren't watching the live, I mean, Don's got good hair.
Well, when someone commented that my forehead was a little shiny, and I'm going, at least there's not more of it to be seen. That's, I tell it, go gray, just stay with me.
I had a teacher in school. The kids used to try to pick on him for his gray hair, and he used to always be like, I'm a silver fox. Don't worry about it. That was his move. He always said, I'm a silver fox. Well, and it's such a great point that you bring up, your experience with being in the service and how that affects things for you, because we don't see that a lot. And I'm always curious, and I don't know what your feel on it. As a guy with 20 years, do you sometimes see that the support is the flavor now? Do you know what I mean? Like, where people
I do know what you mean. And first of all, thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate you did it before I did, brother. I appreciate you.
Well, then it's mutual, completely.
Well,
So
high
yeah,
five each other.
sometimes I think, you know, especially after defund the police, and we went through the whole movement of everybody talking about, I mean, you know, the whole defund the police thing, and we'll just do community service. Well, how's that working for you? The crime in our streets is through the roof. And so when you combine the fact that people are recognizing that really didn't work, and the heat that both the military and law enforcement took during that period. And, you know, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I'll say I believe in people's rights to have their voice heard. I believe in their rights to peacefully gather. What I don't adhere to or don't appreciate is when outsiders come in to disrupt and turn it into something well beyond the intent of those who wanted to have their voice heard. And when you come back and you talk about how does the fact that, you know, my history in the military and law enforcement deal with being the commander in chief of the Air National Guard and Army National Guard, I can tell you that if certain groups come in and disrupt peaceful protesters and decide to do something else, I'm not afraid to be the commander in chief of an Army National Guard, because I will make sure that our people are safe. And,
Well,
you know, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a lot of Marines to lead, because most Marines I know, they do their 4 years and then they get out, and I can't tell you how many end up going to the National Guard. So many, because they can't get it out of their blood.
Yeah.
And you guys have a lot of bases in California too. That's like, you're very base heavy. I mean, Pendleton's out there. What's the big? There's a big Air Force one. That was actually the first time I ever slept in an Air Force barracks.
Nice, wasn't it, compared to what we got?
Ron, I felt like I had done something wrong. Like, they bring me in and they're like, "Hey, you know, this is your room," and I'm like, "It's a queen size bed. There's a TV with cable," and I'm like, "This can't be for me." And I'm like a young Lance Corporal. I'm like, "This is amazing. This is amazing." They're like,
"Well, you know what we used to say?
What's that?
Used to say that when the Army was given money to move into an area and they had to build an airfield, that what the Army would do is build the airfield, and they'd say, we need money for the barracks. And they'd say, well, you're out. And then what would happen with the Air Force is they'd say, go in and build an airfield. They build all the barracks, and they build all the places to live, and say, we're out of money for the airfield. And then they give them more money and they build their runway.
You're 1,000 times correct. We used to hear the same thing in the Marine Corps, and we'd all sit back and go, you know what? They might have it figured out, you know, as far as that piece. So you're looking at this, and I guess something that I'm curious of, what drives you to be even interested? I mean, we're talking California is, I don't have a better way of putting it, but is almost, the name of that state is almost a trigger word for some people.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, from all the things that have gone on, where, you know, you can get into some of the history of things that have happened there, and good, bad, or indifferent, you know, whatever your feelings are about it. I mean, I was telling some folks, I've drove from San Diego to Monterey. I mean, you want to talk about 180 out in life. Those two places are nowhere near like each other. So you've got a lot of stretch here. What would make you even want to, I mean, because you're just putting a political target to say, hey, I can run this whole state with so much that's going on. Why would you even want to do that?
Because I believe in the state and its people, and I cannot stand where it has been taken. You know, if you look at this place, historically, we have been as high as the fourth largest economy in the world.
Really?
So as you look at, and right now we're fifth. We've been the fourth. Now think about that. That means basically you have the economy to be the fourth largest nation in the world. So that's
I had no idea.
That's unbelievable. Right now we're the fifth. But when you look at the conditions here, for instance, we boast the fifth largest economy in the world while we host the largest number of homeless in the nation. Our homeless total more than 22 other states combined. We have 160,000 homeless in California. So you look at homelessness, you look at the way, frankly, they're targeting our kids.
What do you mean?
You know, and when I say targeting our kids in schools, some of the things that they're doing in schools with the grooming of our kids, they're when I say grooming, okay, I'm running for governor, so I'm going to be political. I believe they're indoctrinating our kids. They're not education centers. They're indoctrination centers where certain ideologies are being pushed rather than just educating our kids and teaching them to think. So when I say they're targeting our kids, when our current governor sends his kids to private school, but keeps our kids out of school. Okay. Those kinds of things bother me.
I can see that bothering you. But I mean, in his position, from a safety standpoint, wouldn't you think his kids would go to a private school because it's just safer as far as his targeting and people targeting him? They would target his children, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I do believe that. But why are those private schools open, but you shut down and won't let kids go to public school?
Oh, I got you.
That's where I'm coming from. Not a private school issue. I believe the parents should be able to choose where the kids go, and the money should follow the student. Because
I agree with that.
Okay. And so I don't begrudge him one bit for having his kids in private school. There were times when my children were in private school, and I have 9 grandchildren. So when you look at the fact that they're in school, what are they being taught? Are they just being taught what's necessary in critical thinking skills, or are they being told what to think? And then they come home with ideology that is so foreign and is more socialistic and Marxist in some cases. And I'm not saying that every school is that way. I'm not saying every teacher is bad. What I'm saying is there is a trend, and it's pretty prevalent today, that a lot of the Marxist ideologies are making their way into our schools, where our kids, the things that you and I have defended for years in the military to make sure that we don't end up a socialist society or a Marxist society, are being openly taught, and it's affecting the next generation. All they have to do, think about this for a minute. We watch television, and we used to say this all the time. What do they call it? Regularly scheduled programming.
Right.
Okay. Now think about there's a reason they call it that. And it's time for us to interrupt their regularly scheduled programming. Okay. Because they have our kids for more hours of the day than we do. Mm-hmm. And all they have to do for generation after generation after generation is create a narrative until they finally reach a pinnacle and a tipping point where they have created a generation of voting change agents to vote in whatever they've been programmed to believe.
Now,
and I don't believe that the schools should be indoctrination centers. They should be an education center.
I agree with that. But haven't we, that you could make that argument going all the way back to the fact that our school systems are set up on an agro society that we don't really exist in anymore for 9 months, taking certain breaks for planting of crops, for all those things. You could even get into the point that the school systems changed during the Industrial Revolution to fit the narrative of staying in a classroom, this is your process, and that, big money got involved in schools. I'm just curious because you brought this up, and I'm a big fan of out here, another political figure out in the New York area. His name was Larry Sharp, and he had a very interesting idea for schools. What would be your, and I'm not going to get into what his plan was, because I'm a big fan of trade schools. I'm a huge fan of trade schools.
Yeah.
I personally went to the only high school in the state of Maryland at the time that was a public school that you had to apply to. You couldn't, it didn't have anything to do with your school district. You had to maintain a 92% attendance, C average, and apply to it. And if you had 3 unexcused absences in a quarter, you failed for the year.
Wow.
If you had 5 excused in a quarter, you failed for the year, because they were but we also still went and learned trades and our regular schooling because they were preparing us for the workforce.
Right. And I think that's brilliant. And there are many, many parents who are calling for SHOP and those things to be brought back into school, because there are those who are they're not academically inclined. Okay. So they're not going to follow a path that takes them into med school, or they're not going to follow a path that, that brings them to be an attorney or some of the higher occupations that require an education like that. So what do? I mean, my family, nephews across the board, all plumbers.
I wish.
All plumbers.
I tell my kids to be plumbers all the time.
Yeah. And they do very well. They're skilled. It's something that everybody needs. And I think the school should incorporate that again and bring it back in. A lot of this wood shop, machine shop, all the things that teach a trade. And I think they should really get the same amount of attention as the academics
1,000%.
That the other schools are teaching, whether they're community colleges or the, the 4-year or postgraduate degrees. I think these folks have the same right to that kind of education as we're giving everybody when it comes to the academic intellectual studies. I think that's absolutely brilliant. But my idea is this: bring it back to what we need. Teach our kids what they need. Our scores in our schools are falling around the nation to fall far below, frankly, other nations. And one of the things that we're doing as well, and this is Ron Jones's theory, but I think one of the most incredible things that we export from this nation that is detrimental to us is education. Students from around the world come to the United States. When they get here, they're educated in how we do things. They go home, compete with us, and drive us out of business. And if we're not taking a care of our own people, every culture within here who's here, if we take care of our own people, then that education serves this nation, and it serves businesses here, and it serves families here. But if we keep exporting all of our education around the world to compete with us, all we're doing is diminishing our own role in business, and we're hurting ourselves.
I understand exactly what you mean. And Jeanette, who's one of my biggest fans, and I love Jeanette. She's a phenomenal photographer. I have some of her artwork around the house. She's asking, what specifically do you feel that they're pushing in schools? Is there any one particular thing you would say, hey, this is something that's being pushed?
Okay, I'm not a fan, and you may get haters on this. I'm not a fan of CRT. I don't like things that are a critical race theory.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and what that means is they're pointing out how you are intrinsically racist just because you were born a particular color of your skin. And I think you take away the individual will, the individual choice, and the individual relationship that people have if you start saying that you are inherently racist just because you're white, or you're inherently this because you're this color. I don't believe that's the way to do it. We're all trying to get along. I mean, what was it that Martin Luther King said? Based on the content of your character, not the color of your skin, when that entire diatribe is based on the color of your skin, and therefore you are racist. Just by virtue of being born with that color.
I'll have to do my research on it. I don't know enough to speak educated to be able to say anything, but I'd have to do that myself. Different children learn different. Absolutely, Jeanette. Different children learn different ways. Some by practical application, some by sitting and listening, some by discussion. 100% agree with that. I have one son that has ADD. I have another son who you could just whisper it in the room. He'll pick up on it and he retains it. I have another who's very, very hands-on. So I absolutely agree with that. And I would love if you push the trades. I'm a firm believer personally, when you talk about, the impoverished communities. I think that's one of the biggest things that was pulled away from those communities. Is trades that will always make money. A plumber's always going to make money. Your nephew's being right. An electrician's going to make money. But sending someone to college, putting them in a ridiculous level of debt, that for a position that may not. I watched I'm a big fan of CBS Sunday Morning. I love it because they always have cooking shows on, and I like cooking shows. They had a woman out in San Francisco, which is the most expensive, highest BAH second highest BAH in the country is San Francisco. And woman was on there, and she's $230,000 in debt from Penn State and from her master's, living in San Francisco, and can't make ends meet. It seems insane to me. But yet being a plumber, you can't hear me.
No, I'm sorry. I was telling someone in the room, please be quiet. I can hear you.
I was about to say,
I was trying to be stealth about it.
Look, you were in the Army. I was in the Marine Corps. There's nothing stealth about us but the bombers.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the only. But I love to hear that's something that you believe in, is getting more into the trades and getting that push, because I really think that's how we shift our economy. That's how we make changes in areas that are lower income and that are impoverished, is giving trades, teaching trades, pushing trades, because that's guaranteed money. That's real money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of all my nephews for what they're doing, and they work hard. But I watch them on Facebook, and I just love watching their family posts and look at the job I just did, and look, I just remodeled this place, and I did, and I mean, it's incredible. And I get kind of jealous, going, man, I wish I could do that. I don't necessarily want to be a plumber. Well, I tried to be a plumber because my brother-in-law owned a plumbing company, and I tried to go to work for him, and he said no, so I joined the Army.
Well, my plumber that we have come by the house and helped us out, he always says the same thing. He goes, "Go be a plumber." He said, on a plumber's worst day, they come home stinking.
Yeah.
On an electrician's worst day, they don't come home. I was like,
that's just true. Never thought of it that way. Well, that's my brother. He's an electrician, and he came home, thankfully.
Well, I always used to tell my kids, you can always call a plumber to do electrical work. You can't call an electrician to come do plumbing. And that's a real thing. So we've got all this coming up, and I know you've got some things coming up, so I want to get as much out of this as we can. Where are, if you're in the California area, you're up and down the left coast, where's some upcoming stops, upcoming places where people could hear you speak or interact with you? Or do you have any town halls coming up, anything?
Well, here's what I'll do is, a little bit later, we're going to have our campaign strategist and analyst is Kristen, and she has my calendar. And so what she does is, honestly, she points me, because if I get lost in the weeds about how many things I have coming up, it just goes like, okay, just point me there, and I know what that is, and I'll go do it like this, So yeah, I can't maintain my own schedule, or I will get lost in the weeds. So Kristen will tell you about that. But they can find out. They can find out if they go to ronjones2022.org. They're going to be listing our events on there, so they can find some there here in the very near future.
And now Nate has the most important question for you so far. What is your go-to food before events or after? He said before events. I'm going to add after to it also. The go-to campaign food for you.
Well, when I can find it, one of my absolute favorite foods is Korean barbecue.
Oh, bulgogi?
Bulgogi and rice, yes. Right. Along with the yakimandu, the little pot stickers that are deep fried, and where you cook it yourself on the table.
I got to give you this. There was a spot. I don't know have you ever been to Quantico in Virginia?
No, I haven't.
So if you ever get a chance to go to Quantico, for folks that don't know this, Quantico, yes, it's where the FBI is at, but it's also a Marine Corps base, Quantico, headquarters Marine Corps. But it's also, what's unique is there's a town inside of the base that has nothing to do with the base.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Q-Town. It's a little tiny town. It's the only place where Marines are allowed to go in town in camouflage utilities because it's behind the gates. And they had which was odd because we don't have anything in Korea for the Marine Corps. But there's a large Korean community there, and they used to have the best bulgogi sandwiches. They would put them on like a sub roll.
Yeah.
Raw.
Yeah. And wow. It just, I love it. Yeah.
You guys have great food like that out on the left coast. I'll give you guys that.
Yeah. And Mexican food's really good too. So if I can't find, the bulgogi and rice, then we're going to go for some good burritos, tacos is always a go.
You can't go wrong.
No, you can't.
I'm a big fan out there, and I wish we had them out here. We don't have Jack in the Box.
Breakfast Jacks are the deal right there.
Ultimate bacon double cheeseburger. That's mine.
Go.
Now, and Nate and I always go back and forth. Nate's from Baltimore originally, like myself, so he also wants to know seafood. Yes, no.
Oh, absolutely. I love salmon very much. I like sushi. My favorite fish, if I'm going to have fish, is a big salmon, baked or grilled salmon. Yeah. And crab and lobster. I'm expanding beyond the fish part of seafood.
Yeah. Look, see, for us, seafood is always shellfish first and then everything else.
Okay. Well, I'm learning that. Well, I was
growing up in Baltimore.
Yeah, I was in Boston, and I had their lobster bisques there at Faneuil Hall. There's a place right by Faneuil Hall.
Completely different, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's completely different when you get into those things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, well, that means the next thing, though, is, so I know the governors, is it always mayors or governors that when the big sporting events are going on, they do the bets, we'll send you a case of this and
well, I can give you firsthand of that, Beck. I grew up in Seattle. Okay. And 1976 was the year I graduated high school, and that was the expansion year for the Seattle Seahawks and the expansion year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so our governors had a bet going, and when they played for the first time, Seattle versus Tampa Bay won, so their governor got a case of salmon, whereas I think we were getting the short end of the stick. If Seattle had won, we'd have got like oranges.
I was about to say, what do you get in a case of oranges or something like that?
Absolutely.
Yes, not quite the same. And Nate's, I got to agree with him. Got to get you out there some Maryland blue crabs.
Okay, I'm down.
But well, that could be it. You could, if you win your race. I know there's a big race out in Maryland also for the Maryland governor. Hogan's in a big race out there. Seattle Sea Chickens. We're big Ravens fans. We're big Ravens fans. You're gonna. So now, are you a Seahawks fan? I'm gonna.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't mean to put that out there.
I was back in the days of Jim Zorn and Steve Largent.
Nice.
the way back in the day. Steve Largent is my all-time favorite receiver. That guy was just amazing. I know there are others. I know you've got Jerry Rice. I know all over the place, San Francisco. But for me, Steve Largent was the most reliable. That man ran the most reliable patterns you would ever see. And he had hands. He had hands like glue. He was awesome. He went on to politics as well in Oklahoma.
Did he?
I think he became a congressman for a time. Yeah.
There's a lot of those folks. Lewis Lips was a politician in Pennsylvania. Do you remember Lewis Lips?
The name again, I missed it.
Lewis Lips that played for the Steelers.
Oh,
he was a Steelers wide receiver. He went on into a political arena. He actually, I think at one point in time, he was like running for senator or something like that out there. But he was another one. Then he also owned a chocolate company.
Oh, yeah. Well, he won my vote. I should say he won my wife's vote there.
Oh, she a Steelers fan?
No, chocolate.
Chocolate.
You know what they say? Great. You know what they say? If your wife looks like she needs a hug, give her a hug. If she growls, step back and throw chocolate.
Just throw chocolate. It's safer that way.
There you go.
Now I am curious, because I don't want to miss this opportunity. What is something that for you, like everybody's got their day one thing?
Yeah.
Fast forward, and your guys, I don't know if it's any different because I know we're dealing with some stuff out here in New York where they tried to redraw lines and got told, nope, that's gerrymandering, fix it. So I don't know what day. So your election goes off what day?
The primary is June 7th and the general is November 8th.
Okay.
And then you're sworn in January.
Gotcha. So it's the same. They're just moving our primary because of this whole lines thing.
Okay.
What's your day one item? Your day one, I can do this. This is what I'm putting in place.
Fair question. And I tell everybody my day one is to review every executive order that the previous governor has put out and determine which ones need to go away. That there are a number of those that I don't agree with, but there are things that he can do. So I'm just saying this. That's what I'll do. I'm going to review all of the executive orders and determines which one, after I review them, need to stay and which ones need to go. Because there are a lot of things that he could do for the state that he's not doing that are mandates that I think are basically unconstitutional. Some of the things that he was mandating, and he's starting to back off of them now. But there's so many things he could do for the state that he's not doing. We have a 51-cent Measure A gas tax here that he could suspend, and he won't do it when we're climbing up to $7 a gallon, and he won't do that. So what is he doing? Now, this is an environmental candidate, right? Our environmental governor. And what does he do? Okay, first of all, I'll just say it this way. He starts off before his recall that he won. He issued a $600 tax refund to everybody just to be kind just before the recall. Wow.
I love you guys. Here's $600. Can I get that back?
Yeah, yes. And thank you for helping me through the recall, which you're about to do, because I know you're going to vote for me not to be recalled. And what I call that is keeping your war chest safe and secure while using taxpayer dollars to further your campaign. Now what he's going to do, instead of suspending 51 cents at the pump, I mean, the people would have a realized benefit every time they go to the pump. He's going to give everyone up to two per family, per registered vehicle, a $400 ATM card for gas.
Well, that's so kind.
That's really kind. Now, this is the environmental candidate who's going to send millions upon millions of plastic cards into the environment he loves so much. And he's not even depositing it in the account. He wants something in your hand that says, look what he gave me. And it was supposed to be out here in the summer. Then they backed it off to August. Now it's going to be October, 1 month before the election, that these cards are coming up.
Like magic.
Nothing to see here. Moving on.
Don't look at this hand. I've got something else going on. Yeah, you gotta
exactly right.
You gotta love those things. Now, I am going to make my campaign push right now for an official The Above the Bar podcast day. That's what I need. I'm pushing now for an official day.
Okay.
Across California. Where everyone has to buy a shirt with my face on it and wear it. I mean, I think that's fair. What do you think?
You know, I maybe that should be my first thing on day one. What do you think?
Give you another one. I think that's
another. Now we got 2 things to do on day one.
I mean, Ron, I know you got some things coming up and you got to get ready to jump off here and everything, but I truly, truly appreciate it there, brother. I mean, I always enjoy talking to anyone prior service. And I'm going to agree with Nate here for a second. Yes, Nate, I will run for president of what? I have no idea. It won't be the Hair Club for Men, so we're good there.
There you go.
And we're going to bring Kristen on here in a moment, and she's going to give you the high five. One of the things that we always like to do on the show is I don't want you to miss out on this opportunity. So all of our guests always get the last word. So you won't be at the end of the show to get the last word. Kristen's going to talk to us a little bit here, but what is your final word for us?
I just want to say I think it's time for us to take America in a different direction, and specifically, I'm beginning with my state because that's where I have served for the last 30 plus years. And that's where all of my family is. I should say all 3 of my kids and grandkids and 3 German Shepherds and Fox Terrier, Jack Russell mix and 75-pound sulcata tortoise. We're all here. And I want to turn the state back around to where it's for the people again and not for politicians. I don't think that we're moving in the right direction. I want to bring power back to the people. I want to honor our constitutional rights. I have taken the oath 3 times in my life to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it seems today, for the first time in my life, it almost appears there are more enemies domestic than there are foreign. And in that context, I want to move to where I restore people's rights, parental rights, Second Amendment rights, everything that belongs to us based on the founders. And, with people's help, I could do that. And I know that Kristen will close this out for me at the end, but you can go to ronjones2022.org and would just appreciate you just taking a look at who we are and what we stand for. And I really want to say thank you so much for what you're doing and having me on your program. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this time. I honestly didn't know what to expect. And it's like, I'm almost, man, I got to go. I'm enjoying this.
We'll have to come up with another time, Ron, for you to come back. Trust me, there's plenty of things that you and I could talk about, things that I think about in this arena. We'll talk about it. We'll see what some of your thoughts are. Kristen's going to come along, and I always sign all my guests off with the same thing as you're getting ready to leave, Ron. Be sure to push your stool in.
I'm sitting on one, so I will. Thank you. So great.
You're welcome, see you, brother. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ron.
Well, hello, Miss Kristen. So I'm going to bring Miss Kristen on. Miss Kristen and I have known each other now. We realized this the other day. I didn't realize when I got the first email about Ron coming on with us that Miss Kristen and I have known each other for a year. The first time we spoke was in April of last year when we had Miss Rami on for Hope 365, and she's Rima
Nashashibi.
Rima, not Rami, Rima for Hope 365, and she does advocacy for human trafficking. Folks, go back and listen to that episode. I learned so much, and we actually did that one with the Podfather Herb, who's starting to feel better, and hopefully we'll be back on the air soon. He had some medical stuff, but he's still been supporting the network. It's his network.
Oh, okay.
But we had her on, And then I get this wonderful email saying, "Hey, Sean, would love to have Ron on your show. What do you think?" And I'm looking at this name going, I know this name. Where did this person find me?
So, oh my gosh. Well, I think I was a thorn in your side because I was like, okay, now when, where, give me that again. And Rima was like, did you get it all? I'm getting it. I'm getting it for you. So
we got it all together. And so I have to say, thank you for coming on. We're going to give you another applause here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Miss Kristen, you are a political consultant.
Yeah, I'm a political.
You really work the behind the scenes. And I think a lot of us think about politics. We see that front facing, or we've watched shows like West Wing or any of these other things that are out there. And we think about, oh, who's the spin doctor in this and who's the other person. But
right.
You're not in that vibe.
Yeah, no, and it's so interesting that, it's a team of people, teams, like multiple people that are working on a campaign. And, I've worked on senatorial races, I've worked on congressional races, and now it's my first gubernatorial race, and I was talking to someone yesterday, I was talking to Scott Baugh, because we were at Diane Dixon, she's running for assembly. And we were at a fundraiser, and I wanted to bring Ron around, because fundraisers are great places to bring any candidate, even if you're not speaking, And so I was talking to Scott Bond. I'm like, Scott, I will never complain about a congressional district again. I'm like, this state is so big,
Yeah, that's got to be an eye opener. You don't realize, like I'm telling you, I drove from San Diego when I was in the Marine Corps. I had a friend up in Monterey, and that's actually where the Defense Language Institute is for all the military to learn foreign languages, is in Monterey. So I drove up there. That was a 7-hour drive, and I never left the same state.
Exactly.
I wasn't even through it yet. I hadn't even made it to San Francisco. I was only in Monterey.
Oh my gosh, I know. Oh my gosh. I was like, I organized the entire state, and I have these boards, and I have 7 boards, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is a lot of territory. And I'm like, all right, let's get key people in all these regions. I'm like, let's get them because I can't cover the entire thing. But if I have key point people throughout the state, and that's what I do. Like, I've been in Orange County now for 13 years working in politics. I started. Oh, you want to hear the story of how I got into politics?
Absolutely, because I was going to ask you, as you said that, like, are you a native Californian?
Oh yeah, I'm a native California. I was born in. I spent most of my childhood in the Ventura County. I was in. We had a place in Newbury Park, which is right next to Thousand Oaks, California.
Okay, I've heard of Thousand Oaks and I've heard of Ventura, but I don't know anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So we were there for 7 years, and my dad, he had a lot of jobs in a lot of territories. So we moved 13 times within my childhood. Yeah. It was a lot. But you know what I liked about it? There's a few things I didn't like about it, but what I loved about it is life is an adventure. So I'm like, where are we off to next? And it was kind of exciting, because I love adventures,
You're such a positive person to talk to. I'm going to tell anyone, if you get a chance, if you get a chance to talk to Kristen, she's such a positive person to talk to. You can always hear the smile in her voice, as you can hear as we're doing this, and always a pleasure to speak with. Nate's over here. Nate has a friend who has a political podcast. We'll have to connect you with them, and that's all they do is politics.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Well, I think that, I really think in this world, there's so much, sadness, and just maybe not sadness, but just anger, and I'm like, you know what? We need to look for the positive. I always said that. I'm like, we always need to look at the positive. The glass is always half full. It's usually all the way full, in my house. And even though my days aren't like terrific sometimes, if I keep that glass half full, it gives me an edge, and it helps me with my energy. It helps me with my outlook, and it keeps me out of the weeds, I'm like, there's a lot of times when we're in politics and we're stuck in the weeds, and I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of crap that's happening in politics, but stay out of the weeds. Come up, focus on what we need to do. And I tell my team that all the time. I'm like, stay out of the weeds. I'm all, is this going to hurt our campaign? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, then don't waste any energy on it. Focus, get out of the weeds, focus on the prize.
Start telling them to keep it above the bar. Tell them to keep it above the bar.
I knew, I like that too.
Yeah. See that? You tell them like, just keep it above the bar. Just keep saying that over and over so that they can all look at my podcast and then they'll find me. So, but now tell me, you said 13 years now you've been involved in politics. What was the catalyst for you to even say, well, I'm going to go do this? This is something that seems like of value to you as a person.
Oh, well, it was my 3 kids. So I studied TV and film production, and I majored in TV, film, and radio studies. And I got a job as an assistant editor, and I was an assistant editor, and I worked on Movies of the Week. And then you remember Movies of the Week? Do you remember those on NBC? NBC and
yes,
ABC, they always had Movies of the Week. So that's where I started.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. And I worked for Deborah Raffin. Deborah Raffin was on Seventh Heaven. Remember, she was the alcoholic sister. And anyway, she and I got along with her tremendously, And I was working for Danny Kahn's son. Danny Kahn cut all of the I Love Lucy shows.
Okay.
And I worked with his son for 4 shows, 4 NBC, And anyway, so one day we, it's a battle zone in the editorial room, and one day he was talking to Deborah, and they were like, they would go at it, they would go at it. And I would just be like, take notes, just pretend like you're preoccupied, like go, okay. Huh. And she had 2 little dogs, and they were always in the editorial room. And I had to be careful with my chair that it didn't roll over them, or I'd be dead. That would be my job would be over, right? And so I would be like, come here, dogs, I would just pet you while they're arguing, So, so one day, Danny goes, we need to take a walk. And I'm like, oh, I know that means we're walking out, And so
let me get my box before we leave. Let me get my box.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, here it goes. And I'll put my paper down, sit down. I'm like, we're taking the walk. I'm like, and we're getting Starbucks, which means it's really bad. so I'm sitting there drinking Starbucks we're over in Beverly Hills, and I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm like, so when are we walking? He's like, Kristen, I'm walking. You're not walking. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, Danny, we go together. You know what? I'm going with you. I've worked with you all this time. I'm going with you. He's all, no, Kristen, they're going to let you finish this. I'm going to pass the baton to you. So that was how I became an editor. So I finished. Yeah. Isn't that great?
That's such a cool story.
I know. I love stories. And anyway, and this is a true story. So it's not a fake story. And so anyway, so I finished the film, and then I worked on, after that, I did an A&E biography with Bob Hope. I did Bob Hope's A&E biography. We had 3 editors on board, and it was like the best ever. I had to go into the archives. They had like vaults of just film, like films that I looked through. And I love history of television, film, and radio. That was one of my favorite shows in school, so I just loved it. Right. And anyway, it was just so exciting. And I'm like, I'm going to live here forever. This is my moment, and I have 3 small kids at home. Right. And I was listening to the news on the way back from home, and I'm like, and it said Hillary Clinton was running. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. This is not good for our country. This is not what I want. I don't want this for my kids. I was worried about global security because she was going to have all these Syrians come into our into our, she's going to allow Syrian refugees into our country. And I'm like, not all of them are bad, but they were a threat to our global community, our community, in our country. And I'm like, I'm done with editing. I can't edit anymore. I have to go into politics.
So what is it?
I minored in politics.
So you got handed what really was a gem of a gig. I mean, you're talking, you're doing A&E, you're doing 13 years ago.
I did HBO.
Oh, you did HBO too?
Yeah.
So you're, I mean, a lot of that, I think that's all Warner Brothers, isn't it? That's all.
Yeah.
So you're in the thick of the Warner Brothers world. Yeah. Which, hey, Warner Brothers, if you're listening, I'll do your podcast. I'll do the Warner Brothers podcast. I think it'll be amazing. You should have me. Maybe. But so you're in the thick of that, and because you hear this person's running, and that's you feel like, you know what? Nope, I got to walk away from this. I got to walk away from all this and go to this other thing. What was the reaction? And I know we're going to get to Ron's piece in a minute. I promise we'll go back to Ron. I know that's important. But this is just fascinating to me because I'm always interested by people who make hard lefts in their life and go, hey, I'm on this great path. I'm going this way. But really something inside of you says, this isn't for you. This other thing is. Yeah. What was the reaction from family and friends when you were like, yeah, I'm giving up all this. I'm giving up Hollywood. I'm giving up all these opportunities to hobnob and schwab and do all these things. And I'm going to go into a political arena, which I have no experience in.
Right. Yeah, it was, I had, I really had a mixed review. I like, people would say, is your heart still beating? Does your brain still work? It's like,
that's horrible.
What the heck, And my parents, they're like, yay, my mom's a crusader. Her mom was a sister suffragette,
Oh, really?
Yeah. My grandma was amazing. My grandma, I remember my grandma was one of the first Republican Women Federated presidents. And
wow.
In middle school, I would go to her with her, to her meetings, and I'd bring my little clipboard and I'd take little notes and things like that. I mean, it's in my blood though, to be a crusader, and, not everybody had that, but my cheerleader was my parents, and my husband was, and my kids were happy because I was coming back to Orange County,
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time, in LA, those are long hours, right? So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what God has planned for me, but I feel like I need to do this. I just really felt like directed, like this is what I need to do.
That's awesome. Ray Gagnon, who is a good mentor, a real mentor of mine. He says courage and grace under fire. Ray is a super mentor of mine. He's helped me with a lot of different things and really helped me to we've had conversations over the years, and he was a master guns. He was actually, I give him a lot of credit. He never remembers the story until I tell the story. I was out of recruiting duty. I was back out in the Fleet Marine Forces and wanted to come back in. And he was actually the first phone call I made. I remembered him. I was like, hey, Master Guns, can I come back out? And he goes, yeah. And it was funny because the chief warrant officer I worked for didn't quite understand my recruiting background. And I told her, I said, I'm going to have orders here real soon. And she goes, we'll see if you have orders, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay.
We'll see.
In less than like a week or two, Master Guns had orders or whatever he did. I had orders and they were like in February. And this was like, and I was like, she goes, you have orders. They say February. And it was like 30 days I needed it. I said, ma'am, can you let them know my son's in school? I'll be there in June. Marine, I said, ma'am, can you please? She come back and she goes, the orders say June now. I was like, thanks, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
I was kind of good at what I did there.
You are. Oh my gosh. Way to go.
Master Guns is one of my mentors and did a lot for me. Master Guns, yes, obviously the right decision. Obviously.
Obviously.
He has been a great mentor to me. So
Oh,
let's move a little bit forward. So 13 years you're in politics, you're doing local government, you're doing
yeah.
a little bit of state.
Okay, do you want me
What
to tell you how I got in?
Oh yeah, tell me how you got in because I'm very curious.
Okay, so it's an interesting story. So I'm like, okay, so I'm back from LA. I've got my little coffee. I'm like, all right, let's see what we're gonna do here, right? So I'm like, oh, let's call the OCGOP Central Committee.
What is that?
Okay, oh, it's the Orange County GOP office.
Okay.
Every office in all the counties in our state have a county GOP, Republican office, and they have a county. I think they have a county Democrat, office too. So I'm like, well, let's just call the OCGOP, office. And so anyway, there's this lady named Mary Young that answered. And I'm like, hi, Mary, my name is Kristen Manna. And I'm like, I really want to make a difference. And I don't want Hillary Clinton to win for president. And I was like all excited. I was like a cheerleader. And she's like, Kristen, she goes, where did you come from? I've never seen you around. I'm like, well, I've been in LA, and I told her my story. And she goes, I never answer the phone. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I am running Trump's West Coast campaign center.
Oh, wow.
Can you meet me tomorrow? And that's what I did. Yeah. So I was a volunteer there and I was like gung ho. I'm like, this is exciting. Right. And I was in the phone banking, the phone bank, room.
Answering calls, people were calling in and everything.
Exactly, the center, the phone bank center, and I was like this little eager beaver, right? And I'm like, Mary, let's do this, yeah. So we called the swing states in the morning, and then we called the West Coast at night, So, and we started like mid morning, and they were long hours, and I just proved myself with her, and I got along with people, and so she gave me, I worked the mornings and the first shift, and then we'd have like an hour, like layover, like not layover,
overlap,
but like overlap. Yeah. And then she would come in the evening, and that was like my first jump into it. And
wow.
People saw that I did really well. I got volunteer of the month award. I got to be a delegate, and it was just amazing.
Oh, nice.
So.
And you've been in both feet. You didn't.
I did.
And that was you talk about a serious debate.
Yeah.
I actually sat down with my kids, my one son that was popping around here earlier, and we listened to from another podcast from Wondery that they did all 54. Is it 54 now? What are we up to? 50?
Yeah.
God, 54. Is it 54 presidential elections or 52?
Oh no, it's 46 now. Trump was the 45th, Biden's the 46th, and then
president. But now, how many elections?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Sorry. That's presidents, not elections.
Right.
There's been more elections, but they did every single one of them all the way up to
Biden,
Trump, and they went into like some of the coolest things about some of these elections that here in New York we had a lot of influence in on so much of it. Even getting into like duels and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's very good. If you ever get a chance, it's from Wondery. I have to look it up. I'll send it to you. So
yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah.
But let's fast forward to talk about Ron for a moment here. So how does that come about where, okay, so you've done a presidential campaign for your first one. We're doing some states. What about Ron that you said, was it just his political side that he was a Republican and that's where you aligned to? Or was it more like, was there something that kind of keyed to you?
Yeah, well, here's the story. Okay, so I was at the CAGOP convention, okay, and I'm a networker. Like my dad is a major networker. I love networking, right? So that is my lane. Like I love to network, right? Yeah, I'm like this.
I love it,
and this is like my energy. I love. Like I'm like I go into parties, in these different like clubs, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, I sit in the back and I'm like, I need to talk to him, talk to her, talk to him. Oh yeah, that's good. So I have a little notebook and I like to take little notes so I know, who I'm supposed to speak to, whenever. So I was actually working for another candidate. I was working for another candidate, and he is a doctor by trade, and he has 4 urgent care centers, and one of the doctors was ill, so he was not able to come. So I'm like, oh, geez. I'm like, and I was at one of the best receptions. There's tons of receptions, at these things. I mean, like the tax collector will have not really. The tax collector won't have a reception, but like a person running for, school board, the school board association will have a reception. State senators will have, and each individual state senator will have like their own thing. It's big. Like it's big. So this candidate that I was working for, he was not from our area, and I'm like, our Orange County GOP, whatever we're talking about,
representative.
Yeah, no, our Orange County, our reception.
Oh, reception.
Yeah, sorry. We don't sleep a lot in politics, so sometimes we go, okay, thank God I'm not the candidate, because I would have to sleep a little more. Anyway, so I'm at the reception and I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm like, all right, I know who I'm going to talk to, and I'm just line up meetings for this candidate, right? And so anyway, so I'm going, and then I see a candidate that I work with, and I worked with Christopher Gonzalez. He's running for Congress, and I worked for him until December. And do you remember how like our maps changed?
Yeah, that's been a big conversation out here in New York. It's been real bad here in New York.
That could be 5 episodes with us, but I know you don't have time.
Oh yeah. Well, like I was saying to Ron, we just went through it here in New York, and a federal judge had to come and go, that's gerrymandering. You can't do that, and had to tell him to fix it, because it really would have. I always say, I don't care what your view is. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a libertarian.
Right.
And that would have really just shut our state down to one political party, and that's it.
Yeah, I know. And it's, and so I had a contract with Christopher Gonzalez until the maps, because I'm like, you know what? I know what's good. I know clubs, and I know different areas within Orange County. So let's end it and revamp and see if that'll work for us once the maps are drawn,
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up with, I worked for him through December, right before the maps. And then he moved out of his district that I know really well. And so, I said goodbye, and was looking for something else. Not that I didn't like Christopher, but I just felt like
it was time.
This district wasn't going to, I don't know it as well as some of the other districts. Right. And I don't want to take his money if I'm not going to do my job well. Right. So anyway, so I saw Christopher at this OC reception, right, at the at the CAGOP, and I walked up to him, all, Christopher, and I always have like these ideas. I'm all, Christopher, I have these ideas. He's like, wait, Kristen. He's like, let me introduce you to Ron Jones. And I'm like, Ron. I'm like, oh my gosh, Ron. I'm like, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Kristen Manna, and he's like, and here's my campaign manager, Bud England. I'm like, hey, Bud, how are you doing? And I'm like super excited about like telling Christopher all this juicy things that I needed to tell him. and I'm just excited. Like, this is my energy, and my passion, And so we were talking, and Christopher just like kind of shut me off, and we're just concentrating on them, because he's the gubernatorial candidate. It's like, I can't talk about, he trumps a congressional candidate, right? So we're like, out of respect, we can't really talk about this, right? So anyway, that night I'm like, where are you from? He's all, the Yucca Valley. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, have you met any people? I've never seen you at the OCGOP. He's like, well, I've been in Yucca Valley, and I'm like, well, that's true. I'm like, I have so many people I want you to meet. So I was lining up work for my candidate, but I was also like taking Ron and I'm like introducing to people, networking for him, and anyway, so that was like the first night. And then he gave me a call, the next day, because it's a big convention. And he's like, hey, he's like, can we do coffee? My bud calls me. He's like, would you like to do coffee? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to my first couple workshops. Can we meet for lunch? He's like, yeah, we'd love to take you for lunch. So they offered me a part-time job while I was working with this other candidate. And they're like, do you have any hours? I'm like, of course I have hours. There's lots of hours in a day, So anyway, and my other candidate, he put my contract on pause, and Bud and Ron picked me up. So that's how I got with them.
Well, I got to read this to you.
Yeah.
Master Guns says, it's so refreshing to listen to a genuinely positive spirited person. I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to Kristen. Great interview, great show. Thanks, Master Guns.
Oh, thank you.
I told you got great. I see people who I sometimes tell people, like, you got to talk. Like, I have this person, I'm going to talk to them. They've got great energy. And I tell people all the time, some people you can really hear their smile when they talk.
Yeah.
And you have that. You have that.
You say that to me. Yeah.
You have that energy. So what are some of the things that you've got? Because you've got Ron's calendar.
Mm-hmm.
You control the calendar. What are some of the things if you're out on the left coast, that you got him coming up with?
Yeah, on our entire state. So we have the state. So on the 21st of this Saturday, we have the Huntington Beach Conservative Convention. And this is the first. This is the first. And it's a conservative convention. And my friend Pano is great. He's from the College Republicans. And he used to be a president of the College Republicans. You should have him on his show, on your show. He is running for city council in Huntington Beach. And so I'm like, when I targeted all my people, like my point people and like people of influence, like on my boards, I have like area and people of influence. Pano was up there on the top of Orange County, So anyways, it's Pano put this together, and it's the first conservative convention, and they call it HB Con, and you get to hear from all the candidates, you get to chat with them. There's going to be tables there where you can chat with them, and it's really exciting. It's like state candidates and also local candidates. So, and let's see. Oh, and then if you want to have a nice dinner and kind of like just relax and listen to the candidates, and you don't want to walk around a convention, you go to on the 23rd is the OC Log Cabins Republican Forum at the Palm and Olive. And that's in Costa Mesa. So, and that's with my friend, John Merrill. John Merrill's the president, and he should be on your show too. I have so many people.
Well, you're just going to keep filling my show up with all these people.
I am.
I was big in Montana. Now I'm going to be big in California.
You are. Oh my gosh. You're going to have your own little studio out here too, but you don't have to do that. You can just stay there. You just need more. You need more time slots. Can you just have more time slots?
Yeah, just keep filling up. If it reaches the point where everything takes off and it pays the bills, we'll add more time slots.
Okay. I'll call me because I have lots of people who need to be on your show. That would be fun. And then let's see, 525, the Log Cabin Republican. He's going to be in San Francisco. Log Cabin Republican San Francisco Gubernatorial Forum is happening in the Sausage Factory at San Francisco.
Now that's interesting. So it's log cabin. That's got a real history to it. That term of a log cabin, because that actually gets into. I learned about that from that show I told you I watched where they.
Oh, you did?
They get into a guy who claimed he was I grew up in a log cabin, this, that, and the other, and he was actually the politician was a silver spoon, grew up of privilege, but claimed he was a log cabin beer drinking. and it gets into the whole history where they gave him they planted a person in the audience to be like like, I remember you. And he's like, I remember you, such and such. And they come out and he brings him up and they drink a mug of beer together. But it was
Oh,
this whole
wow.
thing. And they used to parade a log cabin through the
Oh,
streets. It's very neat that that's the
my
term they're going
gosh.
with.
Yeah. I
Oh,
didn't even know the history. I
oh,
probably
it's
should.
that show
That's
was
so
just
interesting.
it's a very good show. I can't remember the name of it. Now you got me curious about something. And with
Yeah.
your background in politics, and this is a
Mhm.
big thing here in New York.
Yeah.
We've never had last time we had a Republican uh, governor in New York was Pataki.
Oh, yeah.
And the big thing with that was because Pataki really only campaigned in New York City. There's 9 million
Mm,
people there. He
mhm,
spent the majority of his campaign down there because he comfortably knew that people of his political views upstate were always going to vote his way, but there's 9
mhm,
million people that really control the way things are done in this state
mhm.
because of the density of that area. Is California one of those kind of things? Like I heard you mention, like I don't know the counties there. I've
Oh,
heard of
yeah.
Orange County, but is it one of those kind of things like, hey, you really got to campaign in LA or
Oh,
San
yeah.
Francisco, or and really that's all that matters. If you can win those two areas, you can win the state. Is it one of those kind of things?
No, California is so hard. Like we know, like every vote counts because we're in a statewide. It's so different than running for Congress. Like I said, I'll never complain about the congressional district after working in state. It's just a lot. And so I know, like San Diego. San Diego is pretty leans conservative. Leans. I would say leans Republican.
All the bases and our military down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So we have a good shot. So we need a heavy hit there. We need to get out there. We need to, and there's certain counties that you need to put more effort into because you will get more votes. Like LA County, we will not get a lot of votes. I mean, we could, but it would be better for us to spend like 6 hours in San Diego. We'd have a greater output. Greater voter potential in like San Diego versus LA. But there are parts of LA that are different. LA is like a
It's
state,
huge.
it's like a state, like Pasadena, like you concentrate your efforts in Pasadena. There's different areas within LA that you'd want to spend more time in. But what's great about Ron is law and order and public safety. And people in cities are tired of being afraid,
It's
you know?
bad.
Yeah. And so, that is the benefit of Ron with his background. He's more than rhetoric. Like a lot of these candidates, I've listened to candidates forever, for better, for worse, usually for worse. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I'm kidding. People out there, I love all of you candidates, most of them. But it's like he has a legitimate law enforcement background. And when he says I can provide law and order, he can provide law and order. He's
He
not like,
understands it.
yeah, he understands it. He's been in it. He is like, he protects. Like whenever we go anywhere with the team, he always has to watch the door. He's like, Kristen, I can't sit
I
I can't sit
understand it
right there.
completely.
And he's like, he has put himself to save people his entire life, and protect us. So this is why I think he is the best candidate for us, for our state, because
That's awesome.
we're falling apart, we really are.
California, like I said, I mean, I truly mean that. I mean, California is a trigger word for so many people, no matter
Mhm,
how you look at it and whatever your viewpoints are. And as we talked about before, here on the show, nothing is off limits, but everybody's welcome at the bar. I truly
mhm,
believe that, here every bar stool sits at the same level. So when we all
mhm.
sit at the bar, we're
Yeah.
all equal in every way, shape, or form. And trust me, we could probably go on for another 2 hours with all
Mhm,
this because I truly believe that the biggest thing to help cities out, to make cities
mhm.
better, is to bring trades, to bring jobs, because people who own homes take care of their neighborhoods better than people who don't. And people don't own homes if they can't get good jobs that can pay wages, that they can afford those things. And it all starts with giving realistic jobs, not putting people in $230,000 in education debt for positions that will never pay enough money to pay that debt off. We're creating debtors. We're creating debtors.
We are. And it's just, the price of goods, they're like skyrocketed,
Oh, it's crazy.
And gas, it's just ridiculous. And, you really hit the nail on the head when you said it's local, like who better knows how to take care of of a city than the people who live there.
They know it.
And they know it. And Ron has spoke about this several times. He's like, you know what? I'm going to work with the mayors. I'm going to work. And if the mayors aren't working for their city, I will, And he's like, I'm going to work with these mayors because the mayors will know what their people need more than what I'll know,
They're there.
I mean, it's so smart, just the way he thinks. And I just value, he's a problem solver, he's not giving us words that we're going to say, oh yeah, we're going to vote for him. He's a problem solver. He's not a politician. He's a public servant. And
I love it.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And I love your approach, and your energy is always so great. I always love talking to you.
Thank you.
Always such a positive. Well, we got to get ready to close the bar up here.
Yeah.
So we know we've got some stuff coming up this weekend for Ron. That was the conservative HB Con is this weekend.
Con, yep.
So and that's good. And then what's the next one?
Log Cabin Candidate Forum at Palm
in San Francisco.
Yep. And then we have the ORWF and Tustin RWF Candidate Forum at the Santa Ana Elks Lodge. And we have all these things listed on our website. And you know what is great? I kind of came up with this idea. I'm sorry. But I'm like, let's have virtual forums.
It's great.
So we have virtual forums. We have 2 or 3 a week. So check our website and check our social media and find out when we're having them. And it's great because Ron will talk to them for 8 to 10 minutes. And then we have questions and answers. They can ask him anything, and they're smaller groups. We have about, 20 to 30 people, but that's amazing. Like if I were a kid and I could get on a Zoom call with 20 or 30 people and talk to a potential governor, is that exciting?
Yeah. I mean, that in and of itself is an amazing opportunity. So we got all these things. People are going to be able to see Ron. And if you're looking to get something into politics, Kristen is on LinkedIn. You can find Kristen Manna on LinkedIn, MANNA. I know that, and I feel comfortable in saying this, that if you reached out to Kristen and said, hey, I'm in the California politics, or I'm looking to assist a candidate, don't care what side of the fence you're on, folks. Don't let that be the thing. Kristen is a good-hearted person that will be more than happy to tell you how to do it, how to network. That's what 90% of this is. I love networking too. That's a whole nother show in and of itself. I get off on it too. And that's a whole thing on the LinkedIn network, or the Zoom networking has changed the way we network completely. People try to do live events now, and it's like, yeah, I can't get away from work, but if you want to do it at lunchtime for 30 minutes, I'll be more than happy to log in and join everybody. But 5:00 in the afternoon, I got kids, I got stuff I got to go do.
Yeah,
I ain't got time for that.
That was the upside of the pandemic,
Yeah, we all learned how to network now.
Yeah, and we had more time,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
So look, folks, make sure you're reaching out. ronjones.org. That's a whole nother funny story. ronjones2022.org. That's a whole nother funny story that Kristen and I will tell you one day. But ronjones2022.org. His social media is Ron Jones for CA on Facebook. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what the Instagram.
Just check our website. I'm not sure of the Instagram either. I don't want to say it wrong. But I
believe it's Ron Jones 2022. I have to double check myself. Look at that right there in front of you. That reading thing gets you every time, won't it?
Like, oh, geez. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't on this one. It's a QR. So
QR codes that we do. I don't even carry a business card anymore. I have a QR business card.
I love that
because environmentally friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
If you liked what you heard, folks, if this is the first time you're listening to us, please like, share, follow Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, anywhere that you're finding us. Please make sure that you reach out to us. Give this a share. If your neighbor hasn't listened to the podcast yet, make sure you take your neighbor's phone away from them, plug it into their phone. They'll love you for it. They'll so appreciate it. Don't even worry about it. If it's a stranger, take their phone and do the same exact thing. They'll appreciate it also. Don't tell them I told you to do it. Kristen, as always, the guest gets the last word. And what is the final word from you?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? I really feel in my heart that I've met a lot of candidates. I've seen all of the gubernatorial candidates on the GOP side. And if you want to vote to make a difference for someone who's going to lead our state, vote Ron Jones for governor.
All righty, folks. Be sure to push your stool in. Don't log off, Kristen. Be sure to push your stool in.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation. Found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.